Well, good evening, everyone. It is indeed our pleasure to host you for tonight's forum on Alzheimer's dementia, presented by the Southern area of the Links Incorporated. Our membership is made up of over 5,000 professional African-American women who are here from 84 chapters across the Southern area, which includes 7 states and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Our members are dedicated to transformative programming as a part of our larger international body, the Links Incorporated. Now, we are proud to bring expertise and conversation on issues that affect those around us in our communities and through these airwaves. Tonight, you are joining us for our P.O.W.E.R, P-O-W-E-R, prioritizing our well-being and embracing resilience. But first, we bring you greetings from the Southern Area Director of the Links Incorporated, Mrs. Vanessa R. Falls.
Good evening. I am Vanessa Falls, the Southern Area Director of the Links Incorporated. Thank you for joining us this evening for our town hall meeting, The Power of Knowing Alzheimer's Disease. According to the Alzheimer's Association, in 2023, almost 6.7 million adults aged 65 and older were living with Alzheimer's disease, also called dementia, which is approximately 1 in every 9 older persons. Dementia is a type of brain illness with progressively worsening memory, impaired thinking, and physical disability. Women are more likely to be diagnosed than men. Older African Americans and Hispanic Americans are much more likely than their white counterparts, almost 2 times, to have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. The decline in cognitive memory and general functioning associated with dementia takes a toll on the individual with this disease, as well as their families. For these reasons, it is our goal to shine light on Alzheimer's and other types of dementia that impacts on families and caregivers. Through our expert speakers tonight, you will get valuable information and resources for you and your families. Thank you again for joining us, and I will now turn the virtual stage back to Dr. Tedra Anderson Brown, the Southern Area Mental Health and Wellness Chair. Dr. Anderson Brown.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to our Southern Area Director, Mrs. Vanessa Falls, for that wonderful welcome. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, Mrs. Karen Greer. Mrs. Greer has been part of the WSB-TV News family since September 2022 and anchors the Channel 2 Action News at 5 p.m. She serves as an anchor and investigative reporter in the Atlanta market for more than 30 years. She has a history of hands-on community involvement and can be seen hosting breast cancer, Alzheimer's, and other fundraising events all over the state of Georgia. Greer is the past president of the Atlanta Press Club and currently serves on the Board of Governors for the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. She is the recipient of 10 Southeast Emmy Awards, 2 awards for the Atlanta Association of Black Journalists, and a Salute to Excellence Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. Mrs. Greer is a member of the Magnolia, Georgia chapter of the Links Incorporated, a charter member of the Greater North Atlanta chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated, and a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, to name just a few. Throughout her career, Greer has been the recipient of numerous awards honoring both her professional work and community contributions. She has consistently been named one of Atlanta's 100 Women of Influence by the Atlanta Business League and featured as a powerhouse in Who's Who in Black Atlanta. We welcome her, and please put your virtual hands together for our moderator, Mrs. Karen Greer.
Tedra Anderson Brown, thank you so much. I didn't know who you were talking about at one point there. That's a long introduction. We got to work on cutting that thing down. I am so honored to be here with all of you. What a night. We've got some interesting and just some facts that you're going to want to hear, information that we hope can help you, because as we know, as we heard earlier from the Southern Area Director, Vanessa Falls, this is something really that touches all of us in some way. You may say, I don't have a loved one, but you may have a friend. You may say, this has nothing to do with me, but you don't know what could happen in a year, in 6 months. Things are changing, and we are seeing, when it comes to our health, so many of us are finding that loved ones, dear friends, are really at that point in their lives where they are going to need some extra help. I know I see that. My mother's now in her 80s, and I'm watching her change. And those are things we need to be aware of and look for warning signs. So that's what tonight is all about. We are honored, excited that you are joining us tonight, this rainy night, and flurries coming tomorrow, but that's okay. We're inside, we're warm, and we're going to talk about some things that are going to warm our hearts, some ways that you can make a difference with your family, with your loved ones when it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's, and teach you a few things that you may not have known before. So I'm excited. Let's just get this ball rolling and tell you about some of the people who are going to be joining us right now. First of all, Dr. Carl V. Hill is joining us. He is the Chief Diversity and Equity Inclusion Officer for the Alzheimer's Association, overseeing strategic initiatives to strengthen the association's outreach to all populations and providing communities with resources and support to address the Alzheimer's crisis. Dr. Hill holds a master's degree in public health from Morehouse School of Medicine and received its Distinguished Alumnus Award in 2019. He earned a PhD from the University of Michigan. You guys did pretty well in that football game the other night. Yeah. And in his role with the Alzheimer's Association, Dr. Hill is responsible for driving association-wide messaging and mobilization efforts. And as a result of his leadership, the association has broadened its reach to previously understand communities with over 30 national partners, such as the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, among others. In addition, under Dr. Hill's guidance, the association has established innovative partnerships such as to develop Unforgettable. That's a community-focused stage play that focuses on a family navigating Alzheimer's disease and caregiving. So join me in welcoming Dr. Hill. And we have with us as well a graduate of Fisk University and the University of Nebraska Medical Center, Dr. Monica Parker. She completed her residency in family medicine at the University of Mississippi. She joined the Emory School of Medicine faculty in 1995 as medical director and of the Emory Clinic of Social Circle. She's transitioned roles from a geriatric primary care provider to that of clinical research investigator at National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Aging, funded Alzheimer's research centers in the US. Dr. Partner is director of both the Outreach Recruitment and Education, ORE, and Minority Engagement Corps, MEC. She provides national service on the FDA's Patient Engagement Advisory Committee and to the Commission on Continuing Professional Development for the American Academy of Family Physicians. A recipient of several honors, she was a 2021 Yellow Rose Awardee of the Georgia Legislature Women's Caucus. Castle Connolly and Associates named her one of Atlanta's top doctors. And Dr. Parker is a member of the Athens, Georgia chapter of the Links Incorporated, and she was the first national chairman of the Health and Human Services facet. We want to thank both of them for joining us. We're going to start really and get some information. Let you all tell us a little bit about why you are here and why this is so important. So want to begin right now with Dr. Anderson, or actually want to begin right now with, if we can get Dr. Hill to talk to us a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen. It is just an extreme honor to be here with the Links Incorporated. I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, as you said, and we are just thrilled to partner with the Links Incorporated to address what I think is a public health crisis, right? And I say, Alzheimer's and other dementia is a public health crisis. And I know Dr. Parker is going to go into some of that detail, but we know right now more than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's or another dementia in the United States. 2/3 of people affected by Alzheimer's or another dementia are women, right? And as Vanessa Falls said earlier in a very timely and important video, older non-Hispanic Blacks and Hispanic Americans are disproportionately affected, meaning they're more likely to be diagnosed. One recent study found that 19% of Black African Americans and 14% of Hispanic Latino Americans were found to have Alzheimer's dementia, compared with 10% of older whites. And so we know that there is a disparities scenario as it relates to Alzheimer's and other dementia. And within this already growing public health crisis, our communities are more likely to be affected. And then this is one of the whys that really gets me going every day. Given that disparity scenario, we're not recruited to participate in the clinical trials that are being used to develop therapies and treatments for Alzheimer's and another dementia. Less than 5% of clinical trial participants for Alzheimer's research are Black African Americans. So that to me is a call to action to really delve into a grassroots movement to get the word out about Alzheimer's and dementia, the disparities that exist, opportunities to participate in clinical trials, advocacy for research that centers on other types of dementia, which may be more relevant for Black African Americans. All of that, it really creates the need for, as I mentioned, a grassroots movement that is really built on partnerships. And again, my work with the Alzheimer's Association allows us to work specifically with many national and community-based organizations, but primarily with our work with the Links Incorporated. We're just excited to get these resources out. And then the last why, right? Because if you've been following the news, you know that there are 2 FDA-approved treatments for Alzheimer's disease specifically, right? And so we've got to do what we can to get that information out to communities. What are those treatments about? At what stage of Alzheimer's are the treatments most effective? How do you access the treatments? And so all of that, again, takes a community-based grassroots approach. And we're really, really excited about our work with the Links Incorporated and all of its members all around the country to work in communities to really pursue equity. And I'll talk about that a little later, but that is working to make sure that people can get the information that they need in the ways that they can readily use that. So this is an important discussion, and it is brought about by the question of why, and excited about this dialogue tonight.
Dr. Hill, we appreciate you giving us our why we are here. I went off script a little bit, so I know they're probably killing me backstage because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So now I want to give them another why, show them a very personal message before we go to Dr. Parker, a very personal message that gives you just an idea of what families are going through, what caregivers are going through, what Alzheimer's dementia means to families all over the country and many families right here in Georgia. So we've got a videotape, a very personal message. I want you to take a look.
A story of courage, remembering who she is.
I am Dr. Taldra Anderson, and this is my mom, Frances Anderson. Frances is a former nurse, and she is the best mom ever. She is unfortunately affected by Alzheimer's dementia, characterized by memory loss, and is progressively worsens as time goes by in spite of medication. My mom has unfortunately been affected by this for several years, and COVID-19 during the pandemic made it much, much more worse. Not only did it affect her brain directly, but the isolation also affected her. Unfortunately, Mom has had several admissions to the hospital in a short period of time. Today we're here for a checkup. It can be very difficult, not only for the patients with dementia, but for those of us who care for them. Because as you can imagine, it takes a lot longer to do basic tasks, if they can do them at all. It is particularly challenging though, because my mother has always been so full of life, the life of the party, if you will. 6 to 8 months ago, she was able to stand and dance. She loved to dance. And so now, instead of her being able to stand and dance, she sits in her chair and she still wave her arms as much as she can or tap her feet. And so we're grateful to God for those little moments. This experience with my mom has been, to say the least, challenging, but it also has been rewarding. My mom recognizes my voice, or when she looks at my sister and I and my brother and she tells us how much she loves us. We're so grateful for those little sparks that we get to share with our mother. I am here today to encourage everyone with dementia, but certainly those of us who are blessed to be caregivers. I want to encourage you. You know, I truly believe that God does not give us more than we can bear, but oftentimes we can't bear it alone. And we need to be able to not only ask for help and seek for help, but to accept help. So I'm grateful that my siblings and I are able to help provide for my mother, see to it that she gets everything that she needs, but also that my siblings see to it that I get everything that I need.
Touching story. Dr. Anderson, thank you for sharing your mom. Thank you for sharing that story. That is what we're talking about today. And just seeing her face, her eyes, we just know that, she's right there with you. And we are so proud that she was able to join us to help us understand more about what Alzheimer's is all about. So for more on Alzheimer's 101, let's go to a person that I've worked with quite a lot and done so many of these, Dr. Monica Parker. Tell us what we need to know. Help us understand dementia, what we saw, some of the warning signs and basics.
Okay, so my task is to give you the basics and try to correct some of the misinformation that runs rampant in our communities. First of all, dementia is what we call a neurocognitive disorder, a disorder of your nervous system, a disorder that causes a disorder of your ability to know, to think, all those kinds of things. There are several different types of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most commonly diagnosed. It may be a mixed dementia. Maybe it's Alzheimer's with something called vascular, and vascular is something that results as a result of something like having had a stroke or chronic heart disease. There is Parkinson's dementia. There's an alcoholic encephalopathy or an alcoholic dementia. There's a dementia that's caused by having chronic head injuries and recurrent head injuries. And frontotemporal dementia and Lewy body dementia. They are all part of a spectrum of disorders. So how do you know which one you have? Well, there's a lot of testing that goes on. But what I want you to understand and take away from this discussion is that dementia or Alzheimer's is the loss of the brain's ability to function. The brain has other functions besides memory. They are complex attention, which is what we're doing here. We're paying attention, we're looking, we're trying to interpret what we're hearing. Learning, memory, executive function, which is having to forgot something that you've learned to do previously. Like I used to play golf. Now I can't play golf anymore. I used to be the best cake baker. I can't bake cakes anymore because I can't remember what to do. Something called perceptual motor, getting your body coordinated to move from point A to point B, or to raise my arm, raise my leg, to do something with our body parts. Those are brain functions. And finally, something called social cognition or judgment, being able to recognize people for who they are, to make good decisions, to plan, to have empathy and compassion for people. Those are things that you lose when you develop dementia. So deficits in 2 or more of these particular brain functions, the 6 things that I talked about, give you a diagnosis of dementia. Well, does that mean I have Alzheimer's, or does that mean I have something else? Well, I don't know. There's a process involved. So how do you diagnose Alzheimer's? Well, it's a process. It involves clearing you for all medical problems that may be contributory, for which you see a primary care doctor like me. We know that a 20-year history of hypertension precedes the onset of dementing symptoms. I said that right. 20-year history of hypertension. That's not just, I got high blood pressure, I'm taking a pill. That means controlling your blood pressure. So if your blood pressure has been uncontrolled or poorly managed, or your diabetes has been poorly managed for many years, you are more likely to develop a dementia. And when Dr. Hill said, well, these drugs that are being prescribed may not be for us. There are other types of dementia that are more prevalent in communities of color. So what are some of the risk factors for Alzheimer's and some of these dementias? I talked about high blood pressure. Diabetes is one. They're now calling dementia the 3rd type of diabetes. Hypertension, cholesterol, obesity, chronic inflammatory processes like rheumatoid arthritis, chronic lung disease, chronic kidney disease, chronic anemia. All of these things are associated with the development of a type of dementia. Which kind? You need to follow up with your primary care doctor so they can do the diagnostic workup to make sure that all metabolic and chronic illnesses are controlled. We need to get a brain image, an MRI of your brain. Up until very recently, the FDA had not approved the PET scan, which is a very fancy X-ray that's not available everywhere, to scan the brain, because it's the only FDA approved tool that gives you a definitive diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Most doctors, most practices aren't going to have that, but an MRI is required, some kind of brain image. Then you need the evaluation by a neuropsychological doctor or PhD doctor who does the testing, the cognitive testing. So what It's a process, is what I'm trying to get to. There's no one single test that gives you a diagnosis of dementia. And if you have a dementia, is it Alzheimer's? Probably not. If you're a person of color living in the deep South and you have high blood pressure and diabetes, likely you have vascular dementia or a combination of all. What can you do about it? You can learn how to stay healthy. If you keep your body healthy, you're likely to keep a brain functioning and doing well. We have to eat better, more fruits and vegetables, the Mediterranean diet. I like to say, and all the doctors that I work with will say, a heart healthy diet is a brain healthy diet. So don't ask about this one, that one, or the other one. If it's deep fat and fried, you need to avoid it. How do you get an evaluation? Where do you go to get an evaluation? Well, I'm a part of 37 National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Aging funded research centers in the country. There are 37. In our region, in the southern region, they are in Alabama, in Georgia, in Florida, they have 2. There's one in North Carolina. So if I didn't mention your state, well, where do you go? You go to a medical center, you have a medical school, a university in your state where they are evaluating older adults and providing chronic medical care. That's where you go to get an evaluation. You have to get referred for subspecialty care from your primary care doctor. What can you do to prevent it? Again, I'm going to stress this. Keep your body healthy, keep your brain healthy, all right? Body right, mind right, okay? Lastly, treatment. I'm not going to go into all the treatment, but I will say the first rule of treatment is to manage your chronic illnesses, because most people with dementia die not from the dementia, but from unmanaged chronic illnesses. So just because you have Alzheimer's doesn't mean that you won't have a stroke or a heart attack. Those are the things that take you out. So you need to keep up with your primary care visits. Other presenters are going to talk to you a little bit more about treatments, and I'm going to stop right here. But the most important thing I want you to take away from here is you've got to have a relationship with a primary care doctor. If you don't like the one you got, find another one. And
I love it.
Where they can address it for you and help you with your journey. Everybody doesn't have all the answers. It's a process. We got to work together to figure it out.
And we're all learning together. Dr. Monica Parker, always I learn something new every time I hear from you. Dr. Carl Hill, appreciate you and what the Alzheimer's Association is doing. And because of this today, I did eat healthy. I had a kale salad from Chick-fil-A. And I'm sticking with that. That's what I'm saying. So let's now move on to meet some of the other fabulous people on our panel who are going to help us understand what dementia is, what Alzheimer's is. Mrs. Dion Polite is AARP, Florida's Director of State Operations, responsible for the oversight and management of all outreach initiatives, engagement, opportunities, and education efforts in the state of Florida to its 50-plus communities. She relocated to Florida from New York 8 years ago from AARP New York, where she was Associate Director of the Multicultural Initiatives. She currently serves on the Miami-Dade Board of Elder Affairs and the Broward County, Florida chapter of the Links Incorporated and the International Women's Forum. Throughout her career, Mrs. Polite has received many honors and recognitions that include Legacy Magazine's Top Executive of the Year, ICABA's South Florida Woman of Impact in 2019, and her most recent accomplishment is being selected as the featured artist at the Broward College South Campus Art Gallery during Art Basel 2022, which is fabulous. Dion's a graduate of York College, and AARP's executive program at Georgetown University. She is happily married to her husband, Daryl, and together they have 2 adult children and the most amazing grandson in the world. Can't wait to see him. Let's welcome her. And also in this group, Dr. Belinda Savage Edwards, who is a board-certified neurologist and headache medicine specialist at Rehabilitation and Neurological Services, a family-owned practice which she co-owns with her husband, who is an interventional pain medicine specialist. She earned her medical degree from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Dr. Savage Edwards sits on the advisory board for Impel Pharmaceuticals and Eli Lilly Incorporated. She also serves on the Huntsville, Alabama and the American Academy of Neurology's Wellness Subcommittees and the Practice Management and Technology Committee. Dr. Savage Edwards is an ambassador for the All of Us Matters Research Initiative, a published author and principal investigator for a number of clinical trials, including Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Savage Edwards is a 13-year member of the Links Incorporated. Under her leadership as chair and co-chair of the Health and Human Services facet, the Greater Huntsville, Alabama chapter has received several grants and national recognition. Try to slide that Atlanta in, as you know. Awesome. You see these wonderful panelists that we have with us. Thank you so much. Let's talk now about, thank you for being here. My first question to you is, a family member has Alzheimer's or dementia. What are the first steps that I can take to support them as their caregiver?
Are you directing that to me or to Dion?
This goes to Mrs. Polite.
To me. Yeah, sure. Let me first apologize for my hoarse voice. I'm fighting something, but I've told my colleagues on the panel that I'm embracing the raspiness of the voice. Maybe it'll get me someplace else.
That's great.
So a family member has been diagnosed. What are the next steps? First thing you need to do is to engage in a conversation with that individual. Caring for somebody while they still have the capacity to make a decision and express themselves is really key to a successful process, right? I know personally, my dad had dementia. My mother-in-law recently passed from Alzheimer's, and it really is important to involve them in the caring process, what that looks like. So it starts with a conversation. The other important aspect is to form a team, family members that come together. Not always because somebody is a brother or a sister or a cousin, they should be a part of the team. Because sometimes your mom or your dad or your uncle never expressed to you the apprehensions they had about a particular family member. You may think, oh, because Pookie's good and he knows everybody, he'd be good on the team. Not necessarily so. So it's understanding that to incorporate the person who's been diagnosed in the conversation, getting together with them to form a team that will include trusted family members. Sometimes even a friend, a neighbor, or a pastor would be better on the team as opposed to a questionable family member. Come up with a plan. What's going to happen? Who's going to take care of getting mom or dad or the loved one to the doctor? Who's going to be one to talk to the banker when it gets to be that time? Who's going to be the one that's going to intervene to drive her or him to make sure that there is a routine? Finding the key community organizations like AARP that can provide information, tools, and resources, because that's going to be necessary as you proceed through the process. And last but certainly not least, and I'll talk more about it later on, is taking care of yourself, self-care. Because I know also, as we get into it, it becomes all about taking care of that loved one, and you forget about yourself. And the next thing you know, you're down, they're still up and going, but you're done, can no longer function. So that's a part of what needs to be in place. And I'll stop there and can expand a little bit more later on.
Deanna, I love that. And, we all like to say, AARP, we're not ready for AARP yet.
Oh, yes, you
we're
are.
all ready.
Let me tell you something. I say this often, excuse me, from 1 to 50 is when you're learning, and from 50 on is when you're living. And you need AARP to be a part of that process, because we help you live your best life.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Enough said.
Enough said. Thank you, Deanna. All right, and let's hear from now. I know I've confused you, but Dr. Savage Edwards, let's talk about the importance of learning early identification. How do you know the signs that you're seeing are actually Alzheimer's or dementia, and what are some of the warning signs for dementia?
So some of the warning signs for dementia would be pretty much like the other panelists said, in terms of things that family members were able to do in the past, but they're no longer able to do now. And one of the most common complaints that I hear, or the patients, they may I've misplaced things. I can no longer find my keys or my purse, or mom is always, misplacing things. The thing about that is it's normal to be forgetful, because in this day and age, we all multitask. And what what wasn't mentioned as a risk factor for dementia is multitasking, because we cannot give 100% to 5 things. We can only give 20% to 5 things. And so multitasking, we don't do it well. But in terms of forgetting, it's normal. But what's not normal is if those items show up in strange places, like mom misplaced her keys and the keys were found in the refrigerator or in the stove, so it's that. And these things are get progressively worse. Certain types of dementia will present with hallucinations. It was mentioned, there's a Parkinson's dementia, and that's the one that will present with hallucinations. They may see family members that are no longer with us, and sleep is also abnormal. And sometimes in certain dementias, one of the first things that's abnormal. So, there are so many, and it was mentioned also how diabetes or uncontrolled diabetes, uncontrolled high blood pressure. Yes, that's vascular dementia. And but vascular dementia actually would be different than Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's is a steady loss. Vascular dementia will plateau, because vascular dementia is, as was stated, the result of, it's secondary to. And so it will plateau, whereas Alzheimer's continuously worsens.
So Dr. Savage Edwards, what are treatment options for this? What can you do?
Yeah. So fortunately, it again mentioned the 2 new treatments that came aboard, because prior to then we had 5 oral medications. Those medications were not targeted towards what we have found to be the cause of Alzheimer's, the biomarkers. Okay. And so at best, we thought possibly slowed down Alzheimer's, but they really did not. So as of 2021, there was a medication that was FDA approved, and it was targeting the amyloid protein, because amyloid is one of the proteins that accumulates in the brain with Alzheimer's. So it actually, that particular medication, aduhelm or aducanumab, will reduce the amount of amyloid in the brain. And then the one that was just approved July of 2023 is lecanemab. And so that one is aimed at the tau, and it will reduce the amount of tau protein, which forms neurofibrillary tangles. Now, so those are infusions, whereas the previous medications were oral medications. And then what the other thing that's important is that as a neurologist, my primary goal when I find a patient, or if I diagnose Alzheimer's, I need to stage the Alzheimer's. It was mentioned that Alzheimer's can be in the body about 20 years before it's diagnosed. Well, that's 20 years of precious time. We need to, because most of the medications, including the older medications, are geared towards patients with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. So time is brain, is what we say in the neurology world. The longer that patient goes without the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, the less viable brain tissue there is. And so there are tests that we do in the office. I will typically do the MoCA, or the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, but there's also the MMSE, which is the Mini Mental State Exam. There's the SLUMS, which is the St. Louis Mini State. So, but all of these tests are aimed at staging the Alzheimer's. And so I'll do the MoCA, and it's based on your educational level, and that's also a risk factor for Alzheimer's as well. So if you are within a certain level, 25, 26 is considered normal. 20 to about, to 25 would be mild. 19 or 10 to 19 would be moderate, and then less than 10 or 9 or less would be severe. And so we absolutely want to avoid that. And even clinical trials. So I do clinical trials, and I'm doing a preclinical trial, which means that my trial is aimed at preventing Alzheimer's. So you have to be 65, because that's that's probably the bottom line number for Alzheimer's. And we do a series of tests to make sure that there are no memory problems for the patients. And then we do the MRI, which was mentioned. And we also will do the biomarkers. And we look at the tau protein, specifically the phosphorylated tau protein. And if the patient is at or below a certain number of tau, then they don't qualify. But if they have no memory problems and they're at and they're above the level for tau, what is expected, it's hypothesized that within 10 to 20 years, they will develop Alzheimer's. So that's the population that we're targeting. Those that have no memory problems at this point, but they have the biomarkers they have an increased level of the biomarkers.
All right.
So,
Dr. Savage Edwards, important information. We've got, if you are just joining us, information on our screen as well, some hashtags. We would love for you to let folks know about this conversation, what we're talking about. SA Links Incorporated, END, Alzheimer's, AARP, Global Brain Initiative, Brain Health, Are You Ready, Prepare to Care, and Alzheimer's Association. Those are some of the hashtags we would love for you to use as you are on social media, Facebook, Instagram, watching this. So let's move on. We want to do what we call a kind of a quick round robin style questioning, so we can get everybody in and get some more comments and talk about some things that are so important. So everybody's cameras are coming up, and we want to see these faces. Let's start with and we know we've heard Alzheimer's in the news a lot. We've heard dementia. We just funeralized former First Lady. And it has been just a lot of information out there. She worked hard to deal with, mental illness and what was going on. Rosalind Carter, beloved figure. I know I called Dr. Parker and said, can you die from Alzheimer's? What is that? When people are saying that, what does that mean? So let's start with you, Dr. Parker. Know the 10. What is that?
Well, the Know the 10 comes a lot from the Alzheimer's Association. And I'm going to switch up a little bit and talk to you about what are the things that you are noticing that are different.
Okay.
I think that one of the things that's most important about dementia, the end result is persons who are affected are unable to do things for themselves. So if you notice, for example, that somebody is forgetting to pay their bills, and that was never a problem. If somebody is wearing the same clothing over and over and over again, if they're having avoidable kinds of accidents, I'm driving in the car, I can't see what's behind me. They're having more frequent car accidents. They're getting lost in familiar places. One of my favorite examples is a person here in Atlanta who was driving on 285, which is a perimeter that goes all the way around the city. She ran out of gas in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is 4 hours away, and her daughter had to go up there and retrieve her. And for years, they knew something was wrong with her, but, the mother and daughter always fought. So the things that I think that family members need to pay attention to is inability to do the ordinary. Okay. I can't cook anymore. I have rotten food in my refrigerator. I'm forgetting to pay my bills such that my utilities are being cut off. You know, basic, simple things, you know, wearing dirty clothes, having refuse, things piled up in their house, hoarding. You know, we make a big to do about hoarding. Hoarding is a problem, but it is a neurologic condition. And that's one of those things that is kind of like a warning sign, if you will, that somebody needs to be evaluated. I think that when you see something that looks abnormal, don't just keep looking. Well, I figured my brothers, when my mother started to have trouble, said, well, we figured when you got here, you tell us what was wrong. Well, I'm not going to tell you what is wrong if you don't tell me something's wrong. If I'm looking at you for 10 minutes and you say hi and bye and you can call my name, I don't think there's anything wrong.
Right.
So when something is abnormal and a person's losing his or her ability to take care of themselves, that person needs help. That person needs an evaluation. Maybe it's Alzheimer's, maybe it's a medical condition gone awry, but you need to take time to get it properly evaluated. And for that, you need to confer with your primary care doctor. Maybe you also need to see an elder care attorney, because all of our relatives will fight when we don't know what to do when we have to take care of people. One of the things that I really do like for AARP is that Prepare to Care manual that they have. It allows all of us to get our affairs in order. Even if you're not demented, it's not just for your parents, it's about you.
That's right.
I mean, if you were to run out here and get hit by a car, who would your children call for insurance and other things?
Absolutely.
So that Prepare to Care guide that AARP has is a good way to start having these discussions. You know, we're through Christmas, but as a family, when older adults are living by themselves or older couples, and my cutoff age as a primary care doctor is 80. I know they're independent. I know they can do certain things. But as an older child, as their child, you need to take a greater interest in their affairs and their well-being, and observe the simple.
This internet
Absolutely. And let's talk about, I'm sorry, Dr. Edwards.
Hello?
Were you trying to say something?
You're there.
No.
Okay.
No.
Let me say quickly, Dr. Hill, I'm overwhelmed. I'm confused. I don't know what to do. Where do I get help? What can we do with Alzheimer's Association?
I tell you, caregivers, really need help when the person is in the early stages of Alzheimer's or another dementia. Other caregivers look for help when the person is in later stages. It's just okay to seek help whenever you need it, and as the person, moves through the stages of Alzheimer's or another dementia, they will need more care. We know that. So, one reason is that the treatments, as discussed earlier, can only control the symptoms. They don't necessarily cure the disease, right? And so caregivers will need help. And, as you mentioned, many of them out there may feel that asking for help shows weakness or lack of caring. But the opposite is true, right? Being a good caregiver, from my perspective, is knowing the resources that are available to you. Asking for help shows strength, and it means that you really know your limits and when to seek support and help and care. And so, the Alzheimer's Association, I tell you, we're this kind of the leading nonprofit in this space. Accelerating research, driving risk reduction and early detection. That was mentioned, was good for the heart, is good for the brain, giving people, that information, and then maximizing, quality care and support. And we have 75 chapters all over the country working physically in communities. Our chapters are doing all that we can to work in communities. And so we're offering, this level of help for caregivers, and we offer free education in person through our chapters and online. The Alzheimer's Association has a community resource finder, which can help families and caregivers find local residential care options simply by entering a zip code, right? That's online at alz.org. And then we have our 24-hour, 24/7 helpline, which is at 1-800-272-3900, 1-800-272-3900, which is available every day of the year, 365 days a year, and can help families navigate a variety of disease-related issues. And so, just in summary, knowing that caregivers will need support, finding out what resources are available to you, and then reaching out because I know Dion Polite mentioned AARP, the Alzheimer's Association. We work together. Partnership and cooperation is the name of the public health game, and we're trying to make sure that caregivers have the resources that they need to take care of their loved ones with this devastating disease.
And Deanna, I want to go right to you since he mentioned you guys do work in tandem and partnership. Caregiver burnout is real. And that's something you work with. What can people do?
Well, it comes down again to self-care, right? And not only caregiving burnout, but also the fleecing of your funds. You don't necessarily think about it, but you find yourself because, for many of us, we're still working, we're caring for somebody that's a bit older, that's no longer working, but you're having to split your time. There's no balance. There's no work-life balance, right? Because you're having to split your time between work obligations. Many have families on their own, and then caring for your loved one or loved ones. Oftentimes they're, 2 or 3 or others that we're all trying to juggle. And that's exactly what it becomes. It becomes almost like a circus act. And as I said earlier, in that process, we forget about ourselves. And, I think each one of us on the panel can talk about personal experiences that we've had, that we know this to be true. I say all the time, it's not selfish to raise your hand and say, time out. I'm stepping back for a minute. Time out. That's why it's important to have a team. And Dr. Hill mentioned about the partnership between Alzheimer's and AARP. And in a conversation I had earlier today, we talked about being stronger together. And that's really key because you can't do it by yourself. You might think, for a lot of us, and I'm sorry for my voice, it's no longer sounding as sexy as I thought it would. Sorry about that.
It sounds great.
Excuse me. For many of us, we take on this superhero cape, right? We put it on and we say, this is my mama. I'm going to do all I have to do for my mama. Or this is my dad. He was my ride or die. I'm going to do everything I need to do. But you're doing yourself a disservice because you give all you do and then you forget about yourself and those that love you, those that are still there waiting for a portion of you. It's really, really, and I would encourage those people that are listening to us, take a pencil and paper, take it out. Dr. Hill mentioned some of the resources. I want to make sure that you know about AARPs as well. We've got a caregiving resource center. It's aarp.org/caregiving resources. Go there, seek out all the information you can find. Find out about in your local communities, those aging agencies that you can look for to give you some sort of direction on what you need to do. Find a group that you can talk with. For that's the other thing about people of color. Many of us, I ain't telling nobody my business because it ain't their business. I don't want my stuff running in the streets. But, it's not about that. It's about really finding a support mechanism that will help you be your best self for you and also for those that you love.
I love that. Dr. Savage Edwards, want to talk to you about, I think you're the popular one in the chat. Everybody got interested in this multitasking thing, us with phones, us with devices, us driving and listening and, GPS. How is that a sign, an early sign? People want to know. Help us with that.
Exactly. And so, think about it. Like I said, that the brain is a muscle. And it's definitely true that the more you use it, the better it becomes. And we once thought that that we could not grow new synapses in the brain. But now, there's, you may have heard of neuroplasticity. So we actually, the more we read, the more our synapses grow, that kind of thing. But there's a critical threshold there, where you do yourself a disfavor by doing that. So multitask, and it's all about focusing. Okay. So the big thing there, and what I tell my patients is that mental exercise is that background noise coming from me? I'm sorry.
I think it's me.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was me. I've been having some technical problems. But mental exercise is just as important as physical exercise. So we always harp on physical exercise, and it is important. We need to be getting at least 150 minutes per week of physical exercise. But we also, equally important, we should be getting mental exercise. What does that look like? In order to exercise your brain, you should read, you should jigsaw puzzles, crossword puzzles, word finds, whatever it takes. And what we're doing by focusing is we're exercising our brain. And we're only focusing on one thing at a time. So when we multitask, we're devoting, and I gave that example of 5 things. We can only give 20% of our energy to those 5 things. Whereas if we were doing one thing at a time, we can give 100%, and we're lifting the heavy weights by giving 100% of our time. So that is important. I was hoping you would also say that they were wanting to know about the clinical trials, because
that was my next question. Yes.
And the resource that is not scrolling across the screen is clinicaltrials.gov, because that's where every clinical trial is listed, and they can filter Alzheimer's. We as a people are severely underrepresented in terms of trials, which is what Dr. Hill said. So we as African Americans make up 12-13% of the population, but clinical trials across the board, not just Alzheimer's, make up, we are 7% represented, and we need diversity in the clinical trials. If we don't have diversity in the clinical trials, the side effects and even the benefits of the medications, it's not being spoken to us. It's geared towards the people who are included in the trial. Now, there are definitely some biases out there, and I know that, about getting African Americans and other races and ethnicities in clinical trials. There are disparities there, significant. There's some
fear.
There's fear, exactly. But that's why we need more African American and people of color principal investigators, because people trust people who look like them. It's no wonder in my trials, I do have more people of color, in my trials, which is good, because then the pharmaceutical companies and other sponsors, they want me to be a PI for their trials.
Exactly. But let's just be real and just put on the table, and Dr. Parker, this is going to you. Nobody forgets the Tuskegee experiment. Nobody forgets that. And the fear of going in and giving blood or going in and talking to doctors. Some people just still have that. They didn't even want to get a COVID vaccination. So I know you've got some clinical trials going on right now. Talk to us about how we can enroll.
Okay, so it's really important to get involved in the research enterprise, but you can't do that if you don't know where to go. So we've talked a little earlier about academic centers. Okay, I'm at Emory University. Any medical center is likely going to be a site for a clinical trial somewhere. A lot of pharmaceutical tests or drug tests, diagnostic tests, there are all kinds of different trials that you can be a part of. Some of them don't even require medication. They just want your opinions. They want you to finish a lifestyle questionnaire. But you have to ask your provider. And unfortunately, many of our practicing clinicians are not associated with an academic medical center, so they may not know where these different clinical trials are. So if you're really looking to be a part of a trial, whether it's for heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, go to a research center where that work is being done. There are some for-profit clinical research centers around the country, but most of the research in medicine is centered at the Veterans Administration medical centers. but in any academic medical center. So in North Carolina, you have Wake Forest or Bowman Gray. In Nashville, you have Vanderbilt, you have Meharry. In Louisiana, you have the Ochsner Clinic. You have, what's the one downtown? I can't think, Ochsner, but there's something else that goes along with it, but I'll think of it in a minute. But the point I'm trying to make is clinical research is available. It's in your community. Maybe your provider doesn't have it. You can look at clinicaltrials.gov, but appreciate that all clinical trials, the studies that I'm doing at Emory may not be the same studies that are being done in Alabama. The study that's being done in Florida may not be offered in another state. So different research centers will have different studies that you can access. Please ask your provider if you are in a university setting. If you're in Jacksonville, Florida, you've got the Mayo Clinic there. Every academic medical center has clinical trials. You have to ask. And if you are being seen in these centers and your doctor isn't offering a research trial to you, ask him or her why not. I mean,
isn't there something now you're working on, Dr. Parker, that we can check out?
Actually, yes. These there's a couple of general studies that are going on across the country that really want your participation. One of them is called the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, where we're doing PET scans of people to look for early stage disease. That's disease that may not have any symptoms yet, but the pathology is in your brain. That's the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative. It's offered at all of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Centers. There are longitudinal studies that over time just study people as they age for normal. Okay, what's normal about you? How are things changing? And in our research centers, we call those longitudinal studies the unified data set. Different research centers will have different aging studies going on. I'd like to know more about Dr. Belinda Savage Edwards studies, and those are the studies you should populate. You need to find out what she's doing and go there. I'll drive to Huntsville to come enroll. I mean, I'm kind of afraid. Somebody talked about not wanting their business in the street. I don't necessarily want the people I work with to know that I might be demented.
Yeah.
Okay. So you might need to go travel a little bit. But all studies don't do something to you. Lots of studies just observe you. And observing is a way that we as consumers can learn how better to navigate our different healthcare systems. But more importantly, we're contributing energy and information to the enterprise that wouldn't be there if we weren't participating. The links have sponsored research.
Yes.
And
legislation is
I would like to add to what Dr. Parker said. There's another study which is called the New Ideas Study, and so that one is very similar to what she was saying. Is that they're actually trying to look at just kind of the natural history, like she just mentioned, a longitudinal study. And what happens is that you go to your doctor, and but it's based on getting an amyloid PET scan, because I did talk about amyloid as being one of the biomarkers. So now what's great about that actually is Medicare is starting to soften in terms of covering the cost of those scans. And so that is also another study, and you can just Google, New Ideas, and it actually was Ideas. It's sponsored by Eli Lilly, but there was not enough diversity in the trial. So then the reiteration is New Ideas. So I know they're still actively enrolling in that. And unfortunately, in Huntsville, we don't have access to PET amyloid. So even though I was approved for the study, I've not been able to enroll anyone.
Come to Atlanta. Come on to Atlanta.
You have the means. So
you can come to Florida too.
Florida. That's right. We talk about legislation being important. What is the BOLD Act?
Absolutely. Well, and I was going to add, Karen, just real quickly, to all of the wonderful resources and ways to participate. The Alzheimer's Association has an app, if you will, called Trial Match, right? And in the same way that you match in a dating scenario, this allows users to put their zip code in, and it generates a list of all of the Alzheimer's clinical trials that are currently recruiting in their area, right? So trial match on alz.org/trial match is a way to see all of the studies that are currently recruiting in your area, right?
I love that. I just pulled it up really quickly, see if you may qualify. It's got FAQs, why join a study, great information there. See, we're going to help somebody make a difference. Dr. Parker?
I just wanted to say this, and Carl didn't really touch on this because as a clinician, most of our practices don't have social workers or case managers. The Alzheimer's Association offers free case management. I got into clinical research because it was free medical care, that free PET scan that we've talked about. This is a way to get your health care to be better informed and get it on the sly. Okay, so the Alzheimer's Association has free case management. You do not get a charge. You can call them, tell them what your problem is, and they can point you in the right direction, help you find a provider, a medical provider, help you find an adult day program, a support system, a respite program. So Dr. Carl talks about all this other stuff, but I'm a doctor and I know what you need. You need case management. You need respite care. You need to know where you can go to get free care and how to identify and find a doctor in your community. And you want a person to tell you, not to send you to a website. And the Alzheimer's Association can do that for you.
Absolutely. Call us at 1-800-272-3900.
And what's the BOLD Act?
And so the BOLD Act is really exciting, I think, because as we move to a public health stance with Alzheimer's and other dementia, the BOLD Infrastructure for Alzheimer's Act authorized CDC there in Atlanta, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, to do three important things, right? And I know to generate a discussion here. One is to establish centers of excellence that expand and promote the evidence base for effective population-based intervention. So getting out in communities to do more with what Dr. Parker mentioned, or what Dion Polite mentioned, was good for the heart, it's good for the brain. So, what does risk reduction look like in giving people that information? BOLD also offers funding to state, local, and tribal public health departments, right? So we're moving beyond only the medical and clinical research, but getting public health departments involved. And we know the kind of work that they do in communities to get information out about cognitive health and risk reduction, or increasing early detection and diagnosis, or understanding the needs of caregivers, right? Which in itself is a health promotion or research endeavor. And then the third piece of BOLD is improving data collection, right? Because we know with more data, we can improve the way that we intervene locally. So really looking at better analysis, timely reporting of data on cognitive decline, and then learning more about caregiving and how, it could be different in different parts of the country, right? And so that really establishes these centers and gets public health departments involved and really moves this to, I think, a grassroots community-focused endeavor, so that we can get more resources out to the families and communities that need us.
People in the chat asking about geriatric medicine. Is it a good idea? When would you know that would be somewhere you should go? Dr. Savage Edwards, looks like you want to speak on that.
I thought that probably was Dr. Parker wanted to speak on it, but it actually doesn't matter.
Okay, so on that note, I know there are like 15,000 neurologists in the country, so everybody can't be seen by a neurologist when they want to see them when they need to. Same is true of geriatric medical providers. There are not very many of them around. If you have a very competent, compassionate provider, internal medicine, family medicine, who listens to you and takes care of you, that's who you go to. A geriatric medicine provider is more likely to be associated with an academic medical center because as a specialty, it doesn't pay very well. And most of our patients in that specialty are Medicare only. So it's kind of hard to make a living just doing geriatrics. That's the reality. So a geriatric specialist takes care of persons age 65 years of age and older. Generally, if you locate a geriatric provider, they will be able to spend a little bit more time with you for evaluation. Instead of 15 minutes, they might be able to give you 20 or 30 for your evaluation, your office visit. That's the reality. That's the economic reality of medical practice in the United States of America. But a geriatric medical provider is trained in internal medicine or family medicine, and then they've taken extra training to be able to care for people over 65, because most people over 65 may have multiple medical problems. And geriatric physicians take the time to sort through those different medical problems. Doesn't mean that you're going to be able to stay in the hospital any longer, because we have DRGs and other things that limit hospital stays. So 10 years ago, when somebody had a problem, we could leave you there for 5 or 10 days. No. If you're going to go to a hospital, there's a specific indication and there's a length of stay that's accorded that goes along with that diagnosis. So whether you want to take somebody home or think they need to stay there or not, the hospital isn't going to keep them there. But if you're in a facility that has a geriatric care unit, chances are there are going to be more specialists looking at you, and your length of stay will probably be a little bit longer. But more importantly, the follow-up that you get is going to be a little bit more specific and attentive to the needs of a person age 65 years of age and older. But again, geriatric providers are not commonly found.
Ms. Polite, let's talk about some of the misconceptions out there about Alzheimer's.
Oh my gosh. First of all, I want to say this, and as my colleagues were talking on the panel, in New York, there used to be a store that had their tagline was, "An educated consumer is your best customer." And I'm hoping that the people that are listening on this realize that they're getting information that will help them to be more educated, more empowered, and more informed, whether they're having to be a caregiver or dealing with Alzheimer's or dementia themselves. So I'm going to quickly go through 7 facts about your brain, the myths and the facts. And I think it's really interesting, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to share. So the first myth is you were born with all the neurons that your brain will ever have. The fact is, neurons are continually created throughout your life in areas of the brain through a process called neurogenetic. So there's that. 2, you can't learn new things when you're old. Immediately, my head wants to immediately want to say that's a lie, but I'll say the fact is, learning can happen at any age when you get involved with cognitively stimulating activities like meeting new people or trying new hobbies. And at AARP, one of the things we encourage older adults to do, and I consider myself an older adult. I'm going to be 63 in 2 weeks, and so I'm an older adult. But technology, incorporating technology into what we do in a daily, there is a very large percentage of participants in TikTok that are over the age of 60. So that's something that keeps your brain going and refreshes different portions. Number 3, you don't really know.
Wait, I don't want to see my mother on TikTok.
Well, she doesn't have to be dancing. She can. Don't get me excited. My voice will go crazy. She could be doing other things besides. Although my kids have already warned me, Mom, do not, because I was showing them what I would do. But number 3, you don't really know how the brain works. And the fact is, researchers have made great strides in understanding the brain in recent years. The field of neuroscience is at the cusp of new and exciting breakthroughs. Number 4, myth. Dementia is an inevitable consequence of old age. The fact is, dementia is not a normal part of aging. There's a big difference between typical age-related changes in the brain and those that are caused by disease. Excuse me. Another myth, number 5, only young people can learn a new language. While it may seem simpler for kids with simple sentence structures and a lack of self-consciousness, your age isn't a limitation in learning a new language. Number 6, older people are doomed to forget things. My kids are in their 30s and they forget. But the fact is, remembering details is easier for some people than others. But this is true of all ages. There are strategies to help remember names, facts, etc. And paying closer attention can often help remembering better. And number 7, last but not least, a person who has memory training never forgets. The fact is, keep practicing your memory skills. Use it or lose it. It applies to memory training in the same way it applies to maintaining your physical health. Use it or lose it.
All right. I love it. We have got maybe a minute left in all of this. So I want to quickly go around. We do have a resource guide that'll be available to you after this, where you can go to get a lot of this important information, the go-to resource. But want to quickly let you share a final remark this evening. 15 to 20 seconds if you can. Let's start with you, Dr. Hill.
Oh, I'll make it quick. The time is now. It's urgent. We're looking for partnerships, ways to work together, and equity. Equity is fundamental to this work, right? And that means that we're finding ways to get all of the resources that we discussed to our communities in the ways that they could be best utilized. Language, cultural, strengths, all the ways that we can work together to take care of our communities and our loved ones, and just excited about our partnership with the Links Incorporated.
We are too. Dr. Hill or Dr. Parker?
My best advice is to make sure that you take better care of yourself physically. Pay attention to all of the United States Preventive Services Task Force recommendations for your age. Please make a friend of your primary care doctor who can begin the workup and evaluation for you or your loved ones who may be affected with dementia. There are several different types, but you start with your primary care doctor because, as we've talked about before, a lot of chronic illnesses look like they might be Alzheimer's, but everything is not Alzheimer's. And you've got to work with the doctors to get the right diagnosis.
Thank you. Dr. Savage Edwards.
Yeah, so I'll share what I share with my patients, and whether I'm seeing patients with Alzheimer's or migraine or whatever, it still holds true. I say healthy habits for sweet dreams, because the dreams is an acronym. It stands for diet, because we do know the Mediterranean diet is, one of the better ones out there. Respiration. We forget about breathing and deep breathing. Dr. Parker did talk about those chronic lung problems and that kind of thing. Brain needs oxygen. Those cells in the brain need oxygen. Exercise, very important. Altruism. We didn't talk about giving back. Mindfulness, that causes us to focus and to be present, and sleep. So healthy habits for sweet dreams to mitigate those risk factors for Alzheimer's.
Healthy habits for sweet dreams. We've got it. And Dion Polite, you are on mute.
I didn't want you guys to hear me coughing like, crazy. I'm going to leave with this. Connect, discover, relax, move, sleep, and nourish. Aging is a gift. We're all blessed because we get the opportunity to share and engage in a way that helps people to age and live their best life. Thank you for the opportunity.
You all have been amazing. What great advice, great information. This has been a remarkable night. I thank you for letting me be a part of this evening with you. I want to send it back to Dr. Anderson Brown to wrap us all up. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. This is truly amazing. I learned so much and hope each of you attending did as well. Before we go, we did want to take an opportunity to share some of the resources you heard today. We hope you will find them useful from our national partners, the Alzheimer's Association and AARP. We will add a few more to this list with www.clinicaltrials.gov. And so we think that it is so very important for us to utilize the information. We heard tonight so many great pearls. I have my pen here. I've been writing my notes. Self-care is the name of the game. What's good for the heart is good for the brain. Partnership is the name of this public health game. And so we look forward to continuing this work in our local communities with each of you who joined us tonight, with our Southern area chapters of the Links Incorporated and our partners who we know are eager to continue sharing their expertise, including at our Black Family Wellness Expo, which will be held this March 2024. We also wanted to make sure that you had the contact information for our presenters. We know that you had
so many more questions, but our time has run short. So take out your phones and take a picture of that contact information so that you have it and can use these expert panelists for your gain. And on behalf of our Southern Area Director, Mrs. Vanessa Falls, our Southern Area Program Director, Dr. Prasharon Dixon, and the Southern Area's Mental Health Initiative Committee, we want to thank you all again so much for joining us. This has been so necessary and so informative. A special thanks to our amazing moderator and our wonderful panelists as well for sharing your time, your talents, your knowledge. Everyone.